My name's Chris Hines, and I'm at the BMW Guggenheim lab here in Berlin. And my message, I guess, is to care. We live on the face of a wonderful, amazing planet. And the deal is that we give something back. And I've been talking today about how I managed to do that with an organisation called Surfers Against Sewage, and how we campaigned against government and the Department of the Environment and the Environment Agency and all the water companies, and we made a huge difference. As a bunch of surfers with no campaigning knowledge, very little scientific knowledge, we helped deliver £5.5 billion spend on the coastline of the UK. And if we can do that, then I think everybody can. I think we can, as human beings, be part of that deal, help make us all able to live on the face of planet Earth in harmony with each other, but also with the planet. And that's the biggest challenge facing us in the 21st century, is how we do that. Because at the moment, if we all lived like America, all 6 billion of us, we would need 5 planets. If we all lived like Europeans, we would need 3. We've got 1, we need to do it, but let's believe we can.
I'd been in a press call with the spokesman for the Labour Party when they were still in opposition, when they weren't the government. And subsequent to that, he phoned. So when they came to Parliament, he phoned me up and said, "Could you come to London and act as a special advisor?" So I went up to London, and there were 9 or 10 people in that room. 3 senior people from the Department of Environment, 3 senior people from the Environment Agency, the Minister, Secretary of State for the Environment, and myself, and 1 other advisor. And within 5 minutes, one of the civil servants said, "You can't build a sewage treatment works with UV disinfection. You can't build a full treatment works for a place the size of Brighton, for a big city." And I said, "Do you mind?" And the minister said, "Well, no, carry on. You ask any question you want. You're my special advisor." And I said, "Well, Swansea, another big city's just been switched on, same size." So, and the minister wrote something down. And then he looked at this little guy from the Department of the Environment, and he said, And the chap from the Department of the Environment went, "Fair cop," and put his hands up. And I walked out of there 2 hours later, punching the air. About 3 months after that, the government announced that it would apply full treatment for all of the coastal and estuarine discharges. So we won. We nailed a government as a bunch of surfers with no prior experience of political campaigning, no scientific background whatsoever, but we did it through the belief of what we wanted to see, that we had the right to. Every time someone said, "You can't," we would go, "You want to bet?" So those little bits that come out of that. And when you go to the UK coastline now, all the continuous discharges have stopped. There is no continuous discharge of sewage around our coastline anymore. And right throughout, when you get heavy downpours of rain, you get these things called storm overflows, diluted sewage, so that does occur still. And the directives that apply around the whole of Europe are better. They're more related to health. The information is starting to be out there now. Surfers Against Sewage are still campaigning, but I'll get a text on my phone if there's a discharge from a stormwater and there's diluted raw sewage discharged at a beach. I get a little text on my phone when it starts and when it ends, so I can then make an informed choice as to whether I'm going to go in the sea or not. And Surfers Against Sewage also still campaign for rights of access to waves, and against toxics and plastics as well. And I had the great pleasure of meeting David de Rothschild last summer. I did a talk with him at a big shop in London, and David de Rothschild, I won't steal the thunder of the plastiki, but he basically, on the amount of plastic in our oceans, he built a catamaran out of recycled plastic bottles and sailed from San Francisco to Sydney. So that's the first half of what I was going to talk about, and this is a little wave that I often surf. And then I went to this place, and this is the Eden Project. How many people have heard of the Eden Project here? Okay, so the Eden Project this is an abandoned clay pit, a bit of mining, derelict land, where they used to mine for China clay and take the clay for all kinds of uses. And it was turned into the Eden Project. And the Eden Project is like some big, huge biomes that you can go in, and they tell about the relationship between plants and people. So there's a Mediterranean-y type one, and then a hot tropical biome as well. And they get like about 1 million visitors. It's a visitor destination with some stories in between. But my job there was to talk about sustainable development, and it's quite nice being here at the end of the week where 20 years ago it was the Rio Earth Summit, and it's now, we've just had Rio plus 20, and unfortunately the outcomes of Rio plus 20, the Earth Summit, weren't very good. David Cameron didn't go, Obama didn't go, Merkel didn't go, and they've let these things slip down. They're walking away from the promises to the poor people of the world and to the environment that they made 20 years ago at the original Rio Earth Summit. And those are the big issues: peace, equality, justice, health, women's rights, children, biodiversity, all those things. And we do need them. Because we've got one of these. There's this weird thing. If we all consumed like Americans, we would need 5 planets. So if all 6 billion of us wanted to consume in the same way as Americans, 5 planets. If we all wanted to consume like the Europeans, we would need 3.5. We've got 1. So we really need to get smart. We really need to step up and use everything we've got, all of the skills and everything, to crack it. And it's an amazing place. And we all have an impact, all of us. From the day we're born to the day we get in our little wicker basket. And my mum went out in one of these about 3 years ago, bless her. And I'll go in a little wicker one like that as well, maybe vertically with a tree planted in the top. But we all have an impact. Every single one of us, every step of the way, through the products we use, the food we eat, the waste we create, transport systems, all of it. It's related to our communities, our cities, our way of life, our health, enjoyment, and our happiness as well. And a little tiny bit about happiness. In the UK, and I'm sure it applies throughout the kind of civilized world, they've looked at the relationship between happiness and how much money we earn. And once you can put a roof over your head and over the head of your family, and you can keep your family warm and fed, then the more money you make doesn't actually make you any happier. It flatlines. Happiness drives along at a flat line. And that's because the things that actually make us happy are coming to events like this, meeting other people, doing things like go surfing, understanding the world, brilliant, helping, doing stuff like that. Those are the things that make us happy. It won't be that when I get in my little wicker coffin that you saw, the bits that I regret won't be that I never had a turbo super Lamborghini. It'll be that I didn't spend time understanding my world and the people in it. There's a great book. This is a quite a heavy book, but it's also optimistic. It's The Meaning of the 21st Century, and it basically says we can do this. We can work our way out of all of this. So progress, it's going to take time. It's like slowing down that old, cliche of slowing down the massive oil tanker and turning it round. And we've been charging straight for 200 years towards what we think was progress. And we are slowing it down, some of us, and we're slowly turning it round. Environmentalists do have more of a say now. We're seeing, I heard that Germany within the last kind of couple of weeks went beyond 50% of its energy coming from solar energy. Yahoo! That's world-breaking. I think in the UK there's a big thing, we managed to get to 11%, which is just pathetic, really. And, you've got an amazing wind industry. We've got better wind in terms of the amount of it that blows, but we've got no wind industry at all. So, there are these ways of doing it. the balance between environmental, social and financial. Every single thing we do in this life has a balance between the three. And when I was at the Eden Project, we were trying to communicate this through to the staff, and we thought, triple bottom line, they'll all find that really boring, so we called it pants. We decided it was a bit like a pair of pants. And as an example, when this big project was built, so imagine a place that had 1.9 million visitors a year, and all of the plates and the spoons and everything was all going straight to landfill. None of it was recycled at all. And I had to go in front of the finance director and the manager and try to get them to move towards having a dishwasher and proper plates and knives and forks. And environmentally, if we went for the dishwasher and China, we reduced our landfill by 9 tons. We reduced the carbon impact and the material impact of manufacturing all of these items and transporting them to us. Socially, we created 2 jobs. People got a nicer cup of tea because it was in China, and they could eat salad because they had a plate. Financially, we sold more tea, we sold more salad, and we saved ourselves £189,000 over 5 years. So doing the right thing and doing that balance between them all is something that I would encourage. And even if you do a little bit of that in your own life, it helps. And we understood all of our waste as well. I went through every single bin bag with a team. We literally, in the middle of the summer, we went through every single bin bag and pulled it to pieces to work out what we did with our waste. And then we went up the supply chain. So we went to the people who sold products to us, and we got them to change, and we helped them find solutions so that our waste impact was reduced and reduced and reduced. And then we brought back an equal weight of materials made from recycled material. So it's important as well when you're looking to deal with waste to buy products made from recycled material. That's our composter. That's what came out of the end, the soil. So that was what had been going to landfill, and it just goes back onto the soil. And importantly, I'm a YIMBY. So there's this weird thing in the kind of modern world where we all want to consume energy, produce waste, and produce sewage. But none of us want a sewage works, any energy, or a waste plant anywhere near them. And this is this weird thing. And all these people, so NIMBYs is not in my backyard. Well, I'm a YIMBY. I live within about, if you looked at the black bins over there, that's where my sewage treatment works is, for the whole village. So I live next to a sewage treatment works. It doesn't affect me. Maybe 10 days in a year I get a little bit of a smell, but it's okay. And it delivers that environmental benefit. So at the Eden Project as well, we put our waste compound out front of house. It wasn't some dirty little secret that we had behind. We were responsible citizens and put it right out the front. So everybody who visits that site comes past the waste compound. If you do the right thing as well, this was the sustainability of this company, Wessex, who I worked with, and I opened one of their sewage treatment works for them. And if you're doing the right thing, environmentally, as a company, your impacts are significantly reduced. Externally, people want to play ball with you. You're an attractive company to play with, so those relationships work well. Staff feel fulfilled and safe. They know you're a good company to work with, and you can attract a good standard of employee as well, because you're good to work with. Your infrastructure is sustainable because you're measuring, you're looking after it, and your finances are probably growing because you're a safe bet. And we need to make all of this relevant, though, all the things around sustainability. We need to link them into our lives, because if sustainability is something that's over there and just being dealt with by a bunch of hippies or, open-toed sandals and things, it won't work. It's got to be built into the mainstream of our lives, because if it's our problem, then we realise as well we need to be part of the solution. And there's a little measure. This one really upset the Eden Project, because the lady on the left was a lady called Melinda Messenger, who basically was a kind of supermodel in a way. And all the guys at the Eden Project said, but she doesn't know anything about sustainability. But she was a hugely popular media personality, and that allowed us to tell the story when we made these TV programs. So I made these 3 TV programs with her, and that got us right out into the mainstream. In the same way as we did that with Surfers Against Sewage, we got it into the mainstream media. A little bit about products as well. These are 2 quotes. 80% of all product-related environmental impacts are determined during the design phase. Of 100 million or so products made to date, not even one is totally sustainable. Redesign everything. So that task, that potential is out there, and people are going to crack it. And one I do get fed up with is everybody says, "Oh, the Chinese, they've got why should we slow down what we're doing and deal with some of our problems when China and India have this massive carbon footprint and they're growing?" It's our carbon footprint. We've just moved it over there. We've got virtually no manufacturing in the UK, and a lot of the products for the whole of Europe come from those places. But they'll be the guys, if we're not careful, who'll crack it. They'll be the ones who drive the solutions. And this is a little one that we did at the Eden Project. So first of all, it was done by the Royal Society of Arts, but so I was involved in the team that kind of drove this forward, and its permanent home is the Eden Project, and it's called the Wee Man, after the Waste Electrical Directive, electrical and electrical equipment, and it represents the 3.5 tons of electrical equipment that each one of us uses in our lives. 3.5 tons. So that Wee Man is made up of all of those little things, and if you look carefully you can see washing machine bits and TV bits, and I think his teeth are mice off computer mice and all that kind of thing. And most electrical things we only use them for probably if you buy a brand new electrical drill, by the time you get rid of it and get another one, it's probably only done about 3 hours of work ever. The average electric drill. I live in a little cluster of 4 dwellings, 2 houses and 2 caravans. We have 1 lawnmower between us. And yet you go around, loads of places around, and everybody has to have their lawnmower, and they all have their own electric drill, and we can share. We don't need necessarily quite so much money. And a little bit on choice editing. Choice editing is this concept of editing out all the rubbish. So only have the best available. So Europe could make this decision. Right now, we could say we don't want any poorly designed things anymore. And there's also this important shift from value for money towards values for money. Back to surfing. And I do think surfing has the ability to, because surfing's kind of media sexy, and surfing's used to sell everything from soap to cars to everything. The world uses surfing to sell to us. So we decided we would use it a bit to sell back, and we designed this eco surfboard. So the balsa in the core of it was grown inside the humid tropic biome. It was laminated in hemp cloth and a resin made from plant materials. And it worked. We refined it further, and this is one of the pros when they were in Newquay. So that foam, the foam at the core of that surfboard was 36% plant-based foam. So these things can be done. And the resin again, so that's again hemp cloth and a plant-based resin. And then this chap, he worked in the communications department of the Eden Project, and he liked cricket rather than surfing. So he'd asked whether we could make an eco cricket box. So the cricket box is the bit that goes around here to protect you against the hard cricket ball. And it all went very well. On the day we got a fast bowler who played for England to come chuck some balls down at Ben. But unfortunately, we got an eco box, but we didn't have an eco helmet, and the ball went in and cracked his head and caused this cut above his eye. And that, because of that little accident, we actually got worldwide media for it. So the Mumbai Times in India and the cricket special that was driving in Australia. They all covered it. But the good news is Ben is actually now a dad, so the box worked. And I mentioned earlier about all the plastics in our ocean. This is from a book that a friend of mine, Andy Hughes, did. This book is called Dominant Wave Theory, and it is about, these are all little small bits of, this is a small bit of foam about this big that's on a beach, but there's over kind of 100 pictures there, and they're strangely beautiful. But they're absolutely everywhere, this plastic. And the guys from Plastique are going to talk to you, I know, on Friday. But, you know, I recently took a sieve, just a kitchen sieve, down to the beach with me. And, you know, we picked the beach clean of all the big bits of plastic. And then I just sat there going through the sand with a sieve. And every time I took a kitchen sieve full of sand, and I took it down to the water's edge and I sieved it, I would end up with a palm full of plastic down on this little microscopic, you know, small level, down on this little peanut kind of sized level. And I did it again and again and again. Just any bit of sand that I touched was that contaminated. Scary, scary stuff. And then these whopping great issues about climate change. They're huge, and, you know, I strongly believe they are happening, and I think, you know, if 98% of scientists reckon they are, then it's a fairly safe bet. If I was ill and 98% of the docs said, we think you're ill and you should do this, I tend to go with them, really, rather than 2% of docs who might say, nah, you're all right, don't worry about it, you'll only die. And even if we don't think, you know, climate change is happening, we're running out of oil. But there's loads of energy, and I don't really need to linger here because you guys are probably leading the way. You're one of the best in the world for your renewable energy. But, you know, that's staggering. Just today, enough energy hit the face of planet Earth to last all 6 billion inhabitants for 25 years. And it'll happen again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. There's no energy shortage at all. And then there's the whole geothermal as well. We've got all of that. I saw a thing in the paper today saying 20% of all of the UK's power could be driven from geothermal energy, where you tap into the hot, the heat of the core. Again, you know, all of our buildings should be built this way, and they will. We're going there, and we have to believe in it. And, you know, wave energy, whopping great beauty off the coast of Ireland. You know, the sea goes in and out twice a day. 7/10 of the planet is made up of water. It's moving all around. We saw that film earlier. There's masses of it. And off the Cornish coast, they've now actually just sunk this giant plug socket off there to start to drive wave energy. So this is a 5 megawatt. So each one of these is enough to take 5 megawatts, and they'll be sending out arrays of different test wave technology to tap into the world's ocean energy. And I get really fed up as well with people when they say, oh yeah, wind turbines and solar, it's all, you know, old technique, it's inefficient, it doesn't work. Because, you know, if we hadn't had big phones that were the size of a brick, and I can remember the first ever mobile phone I had, it was in a big bag, and you had to stagger around with it, and it lasted for about 2 hours before the batteries went. And if we hadn't had those, we wouldn't be here. So that progress, that technology, only if we commit to it at the beginning and believe will we drive it forwards. And I thought I'd put this quote up. And this quote, you know, every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired, signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone, it is spending the sweat of its labourers, the genius of its scientists, and the hopes of its children. And that quote wasn't written by a hippie, an old dodderer. That was written by General and then President Eisenhower of America. And it's so true. You know, if we could just get on and understand each other and put the genius of the people who make the weapons into doing good things, we could make the most amazing renewable energy systems. We could water and feed everybody around the world. Easy peasy. And coming into kind of conclusion, I do quite a bit of work with, little bits of work with WaterAid. I don't quite a bit. I could spend a life working with WaterAid, but I got involved with them. They were a charity of the water industry, and we went out to Kenya once, and we got up in the morning and we were going to a watering hole where we thought we were going to see nice wild animals coming down and getting water early in the morning. When we got there, we saw some animals. They were the same animals as us. They were human beings, and they were young human beings, most of them female, and they were walking down this steep, gritty slope, very unstable, covered in gravel, and then they were filling up their water containers, putting 10 or 20 litres on their head, staggering back up out of there, and then walking 5 kilometres back to their village. And I took one of the containers off this girl who was 12 years old, and I carried it for her, and it was about all I could do in the heat to get up this slope. I didn't have to walk another 5 kilometres with the water. I didn't have to do that the next day or for the rest of my life. So, you know, we live on a planet where 1 billion people don't have access to adequate drinking water. 2 billion don't have access to adequate sanitation. But we can all make a difference. You know, 15 quid delivers water to someone, to a family for life. So back to those little things about happiness making you, you know, money doesn't make you any happier. That little 15 quid can make, you know, a family incredibly happy, can make them live. And you can do nutty things. This was a concert that we did at the Eden Project called Africa Calling, and we did it when the Live 8 concerts happened, and Bob Geldof and the team were running around saying, you know, we've got to do all this work for Africa. But we realised down at the Eden Project they hadn't put any African bands on. So they were talking about Africa and doing all these things for Africa, but they hadn't included Africa. So we rang up Peter Gabriel, and we went and saw Peter Gabriel and Midjure, and we said, we want to do just African bands at Eden. And we pulled this together in 3 weeks, and our stage broadcast live to Johannesburg, where Nelson Mandela was on stage. He spoke live to us, and our stage spoke live back to them. And that's just a little example I'd throw in. We pulled that together in 3 weeks, again, against everybody saying you can't do that. And it's that little bit, the two main guys who drove that, myself, I did all the bands and the booking of the bands and arranging them to get there, and the other chap who did all the logistics, we were both surfers. And there's a little bit of there, I think, that kind of commitment, that don't take no for an answer type attitude. And it is, you know, this is all the Occupy movements. Wall Street is our street. All that money actually belongs to all the people on planet Earth, not just a few. And, you know, we are the 99%. And that's what I do now. That's my little website. That's those change tools again. So the last 4 or 5 slides, and only one of them's got words, this one. The 21st century needs us, all of us. It needs us big time. The challenges that we face are huge. Tension is good, it drives change. So have those arguments, have those debates, push companies, push the banks, push the people who legislate and drive the environment of this city and every other city, push our governments. It's part of our responsibility, it's part of the deal. We get to live on this amazing planet. Challenge it, be a true citizen. Be light and quick. If you know 70%'s right and it isn't going to kill anybody, then move. You can always, you know, move forwards. If the 30% isn't going to kill anybody, then move. You can come back and have another review of it 6 months later. Be attractive, you know, be fun. That thing of being out there and being fun is important. Believe that Homo sapiens, us as a species, can do everything. Be passionate, you know, from in here. Give it a load of that. A lot of the world is full of, you know, there's a great quote that the world is run by pale, male, stale people. It isn't. The world isn't occupied by pale, male, stale people. Believe, be optimistic, and always, always challenge the norm. And if you don't think you can, then just think what a bunch of surfers with no knowledge can turn that into that, and a bunch of dreamers down at the Eden Project can turn that old clay pit into that and that, then think what we can all do together. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chris. That was absolutely fantastic. Any questions? Yeah, we'll just, if you keep that one.
Say again? Yep.
But how about the chemical treatment?
Well, so basically, if you're treating sewage, you have a big sieve that applies preliminary. That doesn't reduce the bacteria at all, but it just screens out panty liners and condoms and plastics and cotton buds. Then primary treatment settles. So you have a big tank, and that just you put the sewage in there, and it doesn't move very quickly, and then the big lumps just fall with gravity to the bottom. Then secondary treatment, you have bacteria so you have lots of bits of stone or bits of plastic that have facets, so lots of faces, and the bacteria lives on those, and that eats the sewage. So that's secondary treatment, at which point you're down to a pretty clear, it's very clear, but it's still got a lot of bacteria and viruses in it, at which point then the light works. Chemicals, you've then got to, if you add chemicals and you add disinfectant, you've got to get the disinfectant out, and the disinfectant will have an effect on the environment. So chemicals, you can use chemicals sometimes in the primary treatment. They add chemicals and it causes flocculation, so it causes it to cluster. If you sometimes add a chemical to something, it causes a chemical reaction and everything clumps and forms to lumps. But you don't really need to use chemicals. You can use, you could have a UV panel out there gathering UV light, which drove the UV tubes that would break down the DNA of the viruses. So chemical treatment of sewage is a bit sloppy. It's lazy technology.
Any other questions?
How long did it take you from your first dive in Jersey to actually having the entire coast clean?
I duck dived Jersey's outfall pipe in '94. So all the big discharges were done within 6 years. So it took another 3 years for the government to change. And then they drove in full sewage treatment to 2000. And then the small villages were done by 2005.
Thanks.
But game over by '97. When the government changed, that was the end of the game, and then it was just a matter of building them. Yeah, one at the back, and then...
So I was just wondering if you thought you were helped at all, because since you were surfers, maybe your opponents didn't take you very seriously at first. I mean, maybe that kind of coming in under the surface maybe helped you?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, everybody writes surfers off. And that's good news, really, because the more... Yeah, they thought we were a bunch of numpties. They thought we weren't intelligent. They wrote us off. They never thought that we'd raise enough money to campaign. Yeah, they just... some of the companies would try to bully us. Like I said, one councillor called for us to be banned, but the more they did that to us, the better for us, really, because, it meant that they weren't even watching us, really. So, yeah, it worked well. But for us, as well, the media loved us, because the media got the story. So, there was a big... there's a big drama series on British television called Casualty, BBC Casualty, and it goes out on a Saturday night to it's one of the most watched television programs in Britain. And one of our members was a script writer, and he rang up and said, let's write a script. So we ended up co-writing a script for one episode, which was all using all the surfing imagery. So everybody loved to use the surfing imagery and the story. So we were the underdog, and we had surfing. So it worked incredibly well in driving things up the media.
What is your current project?
My current project is A Grain of Sand. So it's a small little company, mainly me and little people who I work with on certain other projects, and I do a combination of things. So it's about driving positive change. So A Grain of Sand I say A Grain of Sand, small, irritating, but out comes the odd pearl. So in the same way as that's what causes a pearl, that's what I try to do. I try to catalyse and make positive things happen, and I work with a thing called Wave Garden, which is a wave on an inland lake. So it's a man-made lake, so it's Spanish technology, and it drives a lovely wave about 200 metres. So we'll hopefully have one of those in Bristol. I work with a charity that helps people who've served in the military, who've got post-traumatic stress disorder and some missing limbs, and we take them to the seaside and we get them into the water. I work with a construction consultancy and a chap who as well is infected himself with hookworm. So do you know hookworm? So hookworm is a symbiotic parasite. So it's a worm that lives in the gut. And there's this theory called the hygiene hypothesis, that we've made our world so clean that our immune systems are attacking ourselves now because we've removed all of the bacteria and the bugs and things that we would eat and little bits of dirt. So there's a whole load of diseases like multiple sclerosis and things like that that are caused because our world's too clean. And so this chap he's infected himself with hookworm and his disease is gone. So he's now, again, he's a rebel. People think he's a rebel, but slowly they're starting to think maybe he's right. And they're bringing him in, and I'm helping him. And then I come and this is my third talk in 4 days. So I move around. I did 2 talks in London on Wednesday night and Thursday, and now I'm here. And I've got another 2 or 3 in July. So lots of that. And some people I charge lots of money to do a talk, and others I do for free, depending on who they are.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Let's thank in the normal way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That's great.